Welcome to Being Confident from Within with Natalie Potts, the podcast that shares what it really takes to be confident. I'm passionate about helping people grow businesses with confidence. Does it seem like everyone around you is naturally confident and sure of themselves? Well, the chances are they have self-doubts just like you. I'm in conversations with inspiring individuals to share what confidence means to them and to help you find ways to believe in yourself and create confidence at any time. Welcome, Sian, and thank you so much for joining myself and our listeners today. So I was actually just sharing because I didn't press record, so I'll say that part. We just had a little bit of but let's jump straight into it. So we know each other through coaching, and we've built a great relationship over probably the last year or so. I think year or two.
A bit longer, a couple of years,
So this is your second round on us, which is amazing. So thank you. Share with us about Sian, what you do, and where we're going to take the conversation today.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Natalie. So thank you for having me back for a second time. So I am a career and confidence coach, and I focus mainly on supporting mid-career professionals, who mostly women, who need to find that confidence either in the role that they're in or to be able to move on. And sometimes that's about them moving to a different job within the organisation that they work for. It might be about looking for something outside, or sometimes it's about doing something completely different. And often, and I think you will identify with this with your own clients, is people come to you with one thing and actually that's never the thing. So it often uncovers something which is really just about them being more confident, which is very fitting with this series. So what we're going to focus on today, based on my kind of over 20 years in HR and recruitment and learning and development, is about confidence within the interview space.
Amazing. Yeah, for sure. And I know that was something we were looking at a couple of months ago, where, you know, we've got to be agile in business and times change, and focusing on what people really need. And I know for one that I was always super confident, naturally confident in my corporate role I was in, leadership last, 19 years, but definitely the last year or so. And then I had a big interview last year, and I realized that made me nervous, and I wasn't as confident. And there was lots of pressures around that in terms of thinking about, what do I stand for? What does the business want? I think there was quite a lot for me at the time around my self-identity was a little bit lost, and I didn't know which direction I really wanted. And I felt probably pressures from senior leaders of, you got to do this. This is right for you. And this is your next step. If not, see you later. So confidence has really been definitely challenging and different for me over the last year, because then I've had to come out and do my own business, and you kind of really look at it and think, I don't feel as naturally confident or confident in the space. Why is that? And it's interesting. And I know for sure that the interview part really brings that out. What does confidence mean to you?
Just before I answer that, which of course I will, I just want to pick up on what you said there around that interview that you had, that experience that we talked about obviously separately. That you consider yourself to be a confident person, and I would completely identify with that with you. You are a very confident person. But I also think it's important for people to remember that there's a difference in interviewing to being confident in that space and answering questions confidently. And I think that if you consider yourself to perhaps be less confident, it doesn't mean that you can't be successful at the interview, because you can learn to answer the questions confidently. And I think those two things are different. So there's definitely something about identity, which you just said there, but also there's about how do you approach it and what words leave your mouth in order for you to build that rapport with people. So I think that was just something I just wanted to say there and pick up on what you'd said. But in terms of confidence for me, I think it's about being comfortable with who you are, and about being okay with being you, and knowing that that's enough.
Yeah, and there's lots about this idea, like that word there, knowing.
Yeah,
really resonating with a lot of people in terms of, I guess, that part of believing in yourself and something as well. And that's really key. And I think, like you just shared there in answering the interview questions, it's an interesting perspective, because very much aligned to business too. I've really recognised and been focusing on, and with my sales trainers as well, that you've got to have certainty when you talk. And sometimes, and actually we'll probably look at people who will know in business and go, they don't really actually deliver a lot, or they don't seem to know their stuff, but they've got something about the gift of the gab, or whatever we want to call it. They've got that charisma, charm, personality, where actually they just hold themselves. And I know that was something I put on my 21-day challenge in terms of posture, and the idea that Amy Cuddy says is kind of, well, she says fake it till you make it, but really thinking about your posture of confidence and how different that can be. You kind of put your shoulders back, chest up, you know, I don't know, breathing work, etc. Just get yourself in a state management as such. And like you say, then being able to answer something, I think, slow it down and really think about it. And that's a skill, right? That's real skill.
Yeah, it is a real skill. And there's two parts to that interview confidence. One is absolutely about yourself and how you control how you think and feel. And one is about how you actually answer the questions, perform, how you assess. So those two things are very different. And I think that it will be really helpful for listeners to remember that it's really about you making a connection and being personable and likable, more than it is about your job to impress people. Lots of people say to me when we're talking about the interview aspect of the coaching work that I do, you know, I don't like selling myself, I feel like I'm being big-headed or I'm being arrogant. But if you think of that as your skills and your achievements as facts about a product, it's just that product is you. So when you don't think about it in a sense of, I've got to, people often say, but I don't like bigging myself up. I hear that phrase quite a lot.
Yeah.
It really isn't. It's just you stating what you're capable of and what you've achieved using those skills. So if you reframe that selling and you're selling yourself and that boasting as simply you're stating facts about a product, that can make a real shift in how you think and feel about yourself. And yes, all of those things that you just said, you know, the positive energy, the mindset, visualizing yourself doing well, all those things are really important. And you can work on that. And I think that's the aspect that needs constant work. And then how you prep for the interview is just as important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting looking at, you know, like you say, the career as well. How can people build confidence to even do the part before they get an interview, almost, in terms of feeling competent and that they've got the ability to take the next step in their career?
I think that this comes down really to how well you prepare and how much time you're prepared to put in. And my approach would always be to invest heavily in that prep. Now, I know lots of people who literally would do what I would describe as wing it interview, and it works. And if you're that kind of person, then that's great. But for people who are less confident, if you can do what I call talent mapping, so take yourself at the center and say, okay, what are all the things that I'm capable of? What are my skills? What are my qualities? What are my behaviors? What are those personal attributes that make me me? Map those to examples. So when have I done it? How can I show people what I've done? And then the most important bit that I think lots of people miss is, how is it relevant? So if you think about, and you will have done this, Natalie, as I have hundreds of times in terms of interviewing and appointing people and teams, when you're interviewing and you've got like loads of candidates in a day, it's quite tiring. You've got to be switched on, you've got to know what the follow-up question is, you've got to be listening. So make it easy for the panel, build that connection, build that rapport from the moment you walk in and when you start to speak. Make sure that you're building that kind of trust and credibility with them so that they see you in the job. How are you useful to them? Because really, if they're interviewed well, it's not an interrogation. And all those, you know, things like The Apprentice, you know, that kind of quick fire interviewing stuff is not a great interview technique. That's for television. And anyone who answers, thinks they ask a clever question just to make people feel uncomfortable is not great interviewing. But if you reframe it as a conversation with a fellow professional about your opportunity to help them and what they can offer you, it kind of just takes the pressure off a bit.
I even think it's interesting because I remember that interview, exactly like I shared at the start, I had like 1.5 days prep for that, like solid prep I was given to say, look, you need to really go and get yourself sorted. And this idea of winging it, I used to before, because I was like, I know myself in this business really well, I know the business inside out, so actually if you can challenge me anything, I'll probably come back with an answer because I've got enough experience and credibility to do that. However, I used to sometimes think that just this idea of winging it almost leaves you taking any ownership and accountability for when it doesn't go right, because you just go, well, do you know, I wasn't really invested anyway, or I didn't really get time to do it. Where actually I think that's just coming across, that's fear and nerves, opposed to going, and I think this was probably why I was so, and I was desperately upset when I didn't pass I passed the interview, but then not my probation period as such within that time frame, and they wanted to extend it. But I'd given every single thing in the tank to that. And I guess you could look at the interview. It was like another interview as such, a sign-off period, because it was a presentation, all that jazz, and interview questions at the end. And it was very hard to build connection. It was very hard to build rapport. I'd also done the prep before, in terms of, and like you would for any interview you go for, you find out who's interviewing you, you connect, you add, you find out something about them, and like you say, build on that person side, not just rock up and then just like, oh, get to know people then. It's about, like you say, that real prep brings the confidence that you've got the knowledge of what could be asked, etc., and what's going to be asked of you. So you kind of got, like you've said the other day, your ducks in a row.
Yeah, ducks in the row. And if you've done that prep well, and people say, oh, this is, when I first talk to clients about it, you can see the kind of look on their face thinking this is going to take me absolutely ages. But once you've done it once and done it well, actually you can very quickly adapt it to any interview that you're going for. And that's the other thing for listeners to remember, is you must always tailor it for the job that you're applying for. People need to know that you want that job, not any job. Why here, and why are you invested in us, and why should we invest in you? You're not just applying for any job that you can get. So that aspect is really important, and that's about making it relevant to the organization that you're sitting in front of.
And that's the key, whatever position you're going for, is understanding the expectation. And like you say, like, people want people actually that are going to learn, be curious. I think the times have changed now. It's not necessarily always about, I used to look at somebody for a leadership role and think, I need to watch you with my team. I need to see you connecting and engaging, talking to customers, talking to people, to be able to lead people. I can teach you the technical side. I can't teach you necessarily some of the stuff you're going to have to know instantly when leading a team. I can build on that as personal development, but you've got to have a bit of that within your gift too, or want to do it, I think, as well, and be confident with that. And I think that's where it sometimes gets harder, is because you've got to do the inner work.
Yes,
and that's where people struggle in business or this scenario. You can map out, again, use your strengths and put them into different things in your life. But that's the part that's hard, is thinking like that. And for me, the reason I didn't get through that assessment for that specific example was because I didn't show vulnerability enough. And I personally think a lot of that was personal, etc., and that is what it is. But it's it's an interesting, now that was nothing to do with, I got all the results and everything, and I had some amazing feedback. I just didn't show a vulnerability enough for them. It was subjective, but it's that part of actually taking the time out to say, how do I show up, and what do I want to put across as well? And actually, do you know what, in reflection, it's a learning, and I could have been more vulnerable. I wasn't at the time because I hadn't built that rapport, but that was two ways. I don't feel that they'd done that with me either. So it's an interesting dynamic. And then, like everything, that failure, which I do see as a failure, has kind of propelled me and accelerated my growth in other areas that I probably wouldn't have made that decision on. I needed to at the time. So I think that taking and again, what's powerful is to take the time, like we said, to prep, but take the time out after. I don't think coaches do this enough as well when they coach or mentor, whatever, or anyone, to take the time out to say, what went really well with that today, or what went really well this week as a piece? What are my wins? What did I do really well? What do I need to do more of? What didn't go so well? And what am I going to change, continue, and what my actions are such going forward? And minimize those to a three, not flipping loads and then they don't get any done. And I think that is key as well, is being able to reflect and seek to understand and then grow on that. And that's that learning idea coming through.
Yes, absolutely. And I always encourage clients to do that. So if they have applied for, lots of jobs and gone for lots of interviews, and some they won't get, and, that one that they need will come through. is to think, okay, what aspects did I do really well? Where did my prep support me? Where was it that I wasn't as confident, and what's the real reason for that? And how can you put something in place to make sure that that doesn't happen next time? But kind of unpicking it and reverse engineering, I think, is a really important tool, and that has to happen, because otherwise you're taking exactly the same mindset and skills into the next interview. And if it hasn't worked there, it might not work again. So you've got to tweak and do more work before you can move forward to the next stage.
Yeah. I'm going to kind of put you on the spot with this one, but what's the real benefit in having, I mean, I know this, there is, but what's the benefit for people who are maybe thinking about they need help with their career, but not sure where to go? What's the real benefit in coaching, mentoring around their career and interview skills?
I think the biggest thing that I see from my clients is that people don't know what they're good at, or they're not prepared to say what they're good at. So when we start to dig deeply, they do know. And in fact, I had quite a powerful conversation with somebody a couple of weeks ago who was going for an interview and, you know, was really struggling with confidence. And when we worked through all of the skills and all of the examples, it was quite emotional, because they thought of themselves as not being confident and not being like people that they see as being confident. And I think, just to pick up on something that you said a little while ago, Natalie, which was, you know, the gift of the gab. Lots of people got the gift of the gab, but that only gets you so far. You know, I do know, you know, I know of people throughout my career, and, you know, other people, friends that I know, where people have talked themselves into jobs, but 18 months later, there's no delivery. So that doesn't take you very far. You've got to have the substance. And that's what I would encourage people to think about, is you don't have to go in and own the room and be the loudest person and, you know, consider yourself to be an expert and be really impressive and really wow. What you need to do is build a connection and show people what you can do. Make sure that they see you doing it and they've got trust in you that you can. You don't have to be this kind of picture that we often have about confident people, which is very loud, very brash. You know, I can do it all, I know it all. Actually, when you recruit people, you already know that the chances of you finding an absolute 100% perfect match to the job profile you've designed is probably quite slim, but you'll get somebody that you can work with, and somebody where you can build skill like you've just described in your own team.
I also think, and we know that, and I say this all the time, about coaching is so powerful because it helps you raise awareness. That's the key. And there's a part here in that, like you said, that, you know, I know that I have we both have qualifications, etc., in coaching, and I do feel they're important, because lots of people saying out there they coach and they're not very good at it, they've got no qualifications. And you know, I think you have to be credible with what you do. And the same with interviews. When you're going for something, you've got to be credible, you've got to have experience, and you've got to be influential. I think is probably a word that might sit quite prominent with interviews, maybe opposed to even confidence. That, like you said, influential for me would be more that I don't need to be the loudest person in the room, I don't need to be the extrovert, I just need to, and I need to tailor my approach. Is confidence, is knowing how and when to tailor it, knowing yourself and believing in yourself in all kind of situations. And I remember as a kid growing up in corporate, I was incredibly bolshy, direct in my communication, and I'm still direct communicator, but over time, and I think age, experience, and I've just matured in that way, I learned to read the room differently. And I very much remember going and getting feedback when I joined a new senior team, and my line manager said, I asked for feedback, actually. I said, how have I come across? And he said, yeah, really well. And I said, okay, give me examples what I do well. And he said, you just cut the room like a knife. And he says, you're really quiet, and then what you say just has this massive impact, and I'll just watch the room and I can see them sit back in their chairs. And he says, and you own it from that perspective in your message and what you got to say. And he goes, and it's not waffle, it's not all the time. And I think that for me personally, and I was batting this idea of power recently, I've been reading Tony Robbins' book, and he said power is very much more around, you know, driven, getting results, and, you know, not a negative as people can associate it with. And I was just like, yeah, that makes sense to me there, that the power and the confidence wasn't always being that young bolshy thing. If anything, and I got told once I was arrogant. I didn't get a role instantly because I was arrogant, and that was actually just nerves. So I think having been influential, showing up, knowing yourself really well, and being confident, like I say, confident from within with your skills and capabilities, but knowing how to tailor that approach to different situations, that's almost like another level of confidence.
Yes. And also, if you've done the prep well, you should be able to answer almost any question that they throw at you, unless it's something very technical and you just don't know the answer. But that prep will always enable you with a good kind of method to think, okay, I can talk about my skills, I can give an example, I can talk about how I'd approach it. And you can just pull from that. So it gives you that kind of inner confidence and inner calmness that actually, whatever they say, I've memorized a great list of skills and things that I can talk about, and I can make it applicable to any situation. And I always say to people, you know, people have said, oh, I'm not allowed to take notes. So why aren't you allowed to take notes? If you've made a list behind you, just say at the beginning, I've prepared quite heavily. This is really important to me. Would it be okay if I just put these on the table in front of me to glance at if I need to? And that's absolutely fine. I would never say no to somebody who did that in an interview. It shows that you're invested.
Yeah. A couple of questions. So where in your life do you think you could be more confident, or do you know you could be more confident?
I think visibility is a thing, and I guess that we've talked about this quite a bit. You know, as coaches who you know, run businesses, it's a completely different thing to being employed, and so suddenly it's much more about you, and it's much more about you being visible publicly. And social media is not something that I've done in the past. Up until a couple of years ago, I had no social media accounts or presence. So that, I think, for me, is an area where I need to be more confident at putting myself out there.
Yeah. And who's been your best mentor and why?
Who's been my best mentor and why? Probably a chief executive in a few jobs ago who I think was my best mentor because they had faith in my ability and let me get on with it. But also was there to, in fact, Natalie, looking back, probably coached me before I realised what coaching was.
Yeah.
So really supported me, actually really showed me how to run a business at like company management level. You know, in that role, I made lots of decisions as part of a team that were about the whole business and not just about what I did. So much broader than just HR. And yes, and I kind of miss that. I miss that wise mentorship. But certainly that person was the person that shifted my career.
And that's another reason why. And I think at first I used to be like, oh, I'm just selling coaching and mentoring because I do it. But I believe in it wholeheartedly, as we both do. And we've said a lot of this before. And coaches and mentors, like I remember going all in my business. I've got about 8 different mentors at the moment. Like, I need them to help me validate and to help me see things I don't, because I know I'm very hard on myself. And I need people to say, like last week, like I said, 3 of them were like, this is a time where you need to slow down, speed up, Nat. And I need that because we've got such trusted relationships that are respectful. And I listen to those people because they've been there, done that, and they're where I want to be. So I'm invested and I trust that. So that's really important. And I'm just also the point like there that they'll see things that you don't see sometimes because you're so like channel visioned or go next. And I'll just say, just realize what's gone really well. Just realize what you did there, and what's been your wins, and that person to look at, that's great what you did there. Did you recognize that? And it's like, yeah. But it's like, actually, I did really recognize that. Actually, I have really moved forward, and coaches and mentors will definitely help you on that journey. And I think that that's the part where, when you're having tough times, which you do in business, goes up and down, those are the times you need to come to people like that, and for people to be around people that believe in you as much as you've got to believe in yourself.
Yeah. And I think that that's, just to sort of turn the tables on you for a sec, is that's where your authenticity comes through, because even though you describe yourself as being a confident person, and I know you reasonably well, and you never stop doing the work. And I think that's an important message for people who work with you and your listeners, is even though it looks, externally like you don't need to do any work on your confidence. And I often say to you, I leave you a little voice note, like, you're on fire this week, you're like a little rocket ship. But you never stop doing the work. And all of that work has relevance and continues to build on who you are, which will shape who you are for the future.
Yeah, I love that. Sian, where can people connect with you?
LinkedIn normally is where I am. So just Sian Carter on LinkedIn.
Amazing. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Natalie.
Thank you for listening to Being Confident from Within. I hope you enjoyed today's episode and it inspired you in trusting no matter what happens in any particular situation, you'll be able to handle it and learn from the outcome. I really love hearing from you, so please leave a review and let me know which part of the episode resonated with you the most. Have an amazing day.